Imagine a substance so valuable it sparked wars, so addictive it reshaped continents, so powerful it turned millions into slaves and built the foundations of modern capitalism. We're talking about sugar. Today, it's everywhere. Cheap, mundane, almost invisible in our daily lives. But for centuries, sugar was liquid gold. It was power, it was blood, and it built empires. This is a story of how one plant, sugar cane, transformed from a luxury spice for the elite into the dark engine of global commerce. How it fueled the transatlantic slave trade, toppled monarchies, and created the blueprint for industrial capitalism. Because the history of sugar isn't sweet, it's bitter. And it's written in the sweat and blood of millions. Sugar didn't start as food, it started as medicine. Around 8000 BCE in New Guinea, humans first discovered sugarcane, a tall grass with a sweet core. For thousands of years, people simply chewed the stalks. But around 500 CE, in India, someone figured out how to crystallize the juice. And that changed everything. The crystallized sugar traveled along the Silk Road, reaching Persia, then the Arab world. Medieval Arabs perfected the refining process, turning sugar into white crystals. They called it sweet salt, and it was worth its weight in gold. When Crusaders returned from the Middle East in the 12th century, they brought back this exotic treasure. In medieval Europe, sugar wasn't food, it was a status symbol. Kings used it to display wealth. Apothecaries sold it as medicine. It was so rare, so expensive, only royalty could afford it. But then came the age of exploration, and sugar would never be the same. In 1492, Christopher Columbus set sail for the New World. On his second voyage in 1493, he brought something with him: sugarcane cuttings. The Caribbean climate was perfect. Sugarcane thrived. But there was a problem. Growing and processing sugar was brutal, back-breaking labor. You had to plant, harvest, crush, boil, and refine, all under the scorching tropical sun. Indigenous populations were decimated by disease and violence. European indentured servants couldn't survive the conditions. So the European powers found another solution: enslaved Africans. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, over 12 million Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic. Most of them went to sugar plantations in the Caribbean and Brazil. Some historians estimate that 70% of all enslaved Africans worked in sugar production. This wasn't just agriculture. This was the birth of industrial capitalism. Centuries before factories and steam engines, plantations operated like machines. Enslaved people worked in shifts, around the clock during harvest season. They cut cane with machetes, fed it into crushing mills, boiled the juice in massive cauldrons. The heat was unbearable, the hours endless. Injuries and deaths were common. Life expectancy on a sugar plantation was brutally short, often just 7 years. But profits? Astronomical. Barbados, a tiny island, became one of the wealthiest places on Earth, per capita, by the mid-1600s. Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, all became sugar powerhouses. And the wealth didn't stay in the colonies. It flowed back to Europe, funding banks, industries, and empires. Sugar wasn't just sweet, it was the fuel of empire. Sugar created the most infamous trade network in history, the triangular trade. European ships sailed to Africa with manufactured goods, guns, textiles, alcohol. In Africa, these goods were traded for enslaved people. The ships then crossed the Atlantic, the infamous Middle Passage, packed with human cargo. Those who survived were sold in the Americas. The sugar, rum, and molasses produced by enslaved labor were then shipped back to Europe, completing the triangle. Every corner of this triangle was profitable. Every corner was soaked in blood. Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, all built their colonial wealth on this system. London, Liverpool, Bristol, Nantes, Lisbon. These cities grew rich from sugar and slavery. Banks financed plantations. Insurance companies insured slave ships. Even the church invested. Sugar wasn't a product, it was a system. A machine of extraction and exploitation that connected 3 continents in a cycle of profit and death. But sugar also carried the seeds of its own destruction. In 1791, on the French colony of Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, enslaved people rose up. Saint-Domingue was the most profitable colony in the world, producing 40% of the world's sugar. But the conditions were hellish. Enslaved people were worked to death and replaced constantly with new captives from Africa. Led by Toussaint Louverture and later Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the enslaved population fought one of history's most remarkable revolutions. They defeated the French, the British, and the Spanish. In 1804, Haiti became the first free black republic in the world. The Haitian Revolution terrified slave-owning societies. It proved that the enslaved could and would fight back. It sent shockwaves through the Americas and accelerated abolitionist movements in Europe. But sugar also sparked revolution in another way. In Britain, sugar had become a mass commodity. By the 1700s, even working-class Britons drank sweetened tea. Sugar was no longer a luxury, it was a necessity. It fueled factory workers. It became a cheap source of calories for the urban poor. But when abolitionist movements gained momentum in the late 1700s, they used sugar as a weapon. Activists launched boycotts of slave-produced sugar. Pamphlets circulated showing the horrors of plantations. Women who controlled household purchases became central to the movement. The boycott worked. By the early 1800s, pressure mounted. In 1807, Britain banned the slave trade. In 1833, slavery was abolished in British colonies. Other nations followed, slowly, reluctantly, but they followed. Sugar, the substance that built slavery, also helped end it. Even after its abolition, sugar's influence didn't end. It shaped the modern world in ways we still live with. Sugar plantations were the first factories. They pioneered mass production, division of labor, and relentless efficiency. The systems developed on plantations maximize output, minimize cost, treat workers as expendable, became the model for industrial capitalism. Sugar also created the modern global economy. It connected continents through trade, finance, and exploitation. It taught European powers how to extract wealth from colonies. It created the financial instruments, credit, insurance, joint stock companies that underpin capitalism today. And sugar changed diets forever. What was once a luxury became a staple. By the 20th century, sugar was in everything: bread, sauces, beverages, processed foods. It became cheap, invisible, ubiquitous. Today, the average person consumes more sugar in 2 weeks than a medieval peasant did in their entire lifetime. But the cost of that sweetness, it's still being paid. Descendants of enslaved people in the Americas and the Caribbean live with the legacy of that trauma. Former plantation economies struggle with poverty and inequality, and the health epidemic of obesity and diabetes traces back in part to our sugar-saturated diets. So, what's the real story of sugar? It's not just about sweetness, it's about power, about who controls resources, who profits, and who pays the price. Sugar built empires, but it did so on the backs of millions. It drove innovation, but also unspeakable cruelty. It connected the world, but through chains and ships and suffering. And the systems it created, extraction, exploitation, profit above all else, those didn't disappear when slavery ended. They evolved. They adapted. They became the foundation of the modern global economy. So next time you stir sugar into your coffee or bite into something sweet, remember, that sugar has a history, a dark, complex, and powerful history. Because history wasn't written with ink, it was written with salt, sugar, and spice. This is the food historian, and this is how sugar built empires.